Try not to break the desks.
Yeah, it's a good start, breaking our furniture.
And you use the microphone provided. Michael.
Do you need a coffee? How you feeling?
Yeah, no, I'm on my third, so yeah, going all right.
I know it's a quick turnaround. How's the squad from last night? And then maybe I suppose the next one to ask is Romero.
Yeah, look, last night, just sort of the brief I got after the game was that everyone came through unscathed, so there's no issues from last night. Christian, we'll see how it goes next couple of days. The idea is to try and get him out there and train. He's pretty keen to, so he's a chance for the weekend. Mikey probably still not right for the weekend, and probably Timo as well. So really, out of the ones out, it's only really Christian that potentially will be back.
Richarlison feels so unlucky. Is it becoming a bit of a concern for him now? And how is he mentally? Because he looked so distraught last week.
Yeah, no, he was very disappointed because I think I said in the lead up, we try to take a little bit of a different approach, and he worked awfully hard on his rehab, but not just his rehab, his general fitness. He'd really trimmed down in terms of his, conditioning, and he was doing everything right. We kind of eased him back into playing. We didn't tried not to overload him, and unfortunately, he broke down again. And he's disappointed, but ultimately, we just got to keep getting him back in there and working with him to get him back up, because he's an important player. I mean, you even saw last week the impact he had coming off the bench and setting up the goal for us. So disappointing for him, disappointing for us, because we haven't really had him at our disposal this year, but we'll just keep working with Richie and trying to get him back.
Perhaps Liverpool side, there's been ups and downs from nearly every club in the Premier League this season. When do you as a manager take real careful look at the league table? Is it still a bit too early to look at it in great depth?
Yeah, I think so. I think, we're still a hell of a long way to go, and I think for us what's important is we, as I said, just keep progressing in the way we have been. Our football, for the large part, has been pretty consistent, pretty good. We've obviously had a couple of stumbles along the way, but I think within that context, I still think we're making progress, and that's what we'll keep doing. I mean, it's no point looking at the table now, because ultimately it's where you are at the end of the season that's going to count.
I appreciate this is before your time. Hugo Lloris is bringing out a book. I'm one of the bits that's been put out in the paper, talking about maybe the club's mentality in the past. Maybe in the past, fourth is considered an achievement. Do you ever get that feeling when you're in discussions about ambitions in the future here about, top four, that's great for this football club? Have you ever had that in meetings?
No, look, I think, I haven't read what Hugo said. I mean, it's been sort of mentioned to me, but I think with all these things, you just got to put context around them and understand, the broader view of, that could have been a very, very successful period for the club. They were very, very close. So you're talking about, finishing runners-up in the Premier League and runners-up in Champions League. Could have been a very different era, and maybe, in retrospect, you'd be looking at those things. So, it's easy to focus on the negatives when the outcome's not what you want, but there's obviously a lot right at the time, which got them very close to the ultimate. So, from my perspective, I've never allowed anyone else to dictate kind of my ambitions or sort of my aims, and what I try and do with everyone around me is to make sure that you don't put a limit on what you can achieve, because obviously if you do, then potentially you might miss something that comes along your way. So for me, from the moment I started, it's been a pretty clear brief about what we want to try and achieve, and that's what we'll work towards. Thanks, mate.
Hi, Ange. Just an update on Mickey van der Ven. Can we still expect him back after the international break? Yeah,
it will be after the international break. When after, we'll just dictate sort of his progress during that time. I think coming on probably the end of the international break's about 4 weeks. So it'll be some time after that, when exactly, we'll just have to wait and see.
In terms of the fitness of your captain, Heung-min Son, obviously we saw him come off in the second half against Villa, half-time yesterday. Do you feel that he is now 100% back to his best, fully fit, and can play the full 90?
Yeah, look, like I said, for Sonny, we obviously, he had the injury, we brought him back, and in the first game back he kind of had a relapse, and what we don't want to do is put him into that cycle. It's very easy to fall into that cycle by pushing players, particularly when they're coming back from injury. So we're just managing his minutes and building him up, and he got a good 55 on the weekend, he got 45 last night. Hopefully we can continue to build that up, but ultimately for us it's about making sure that we get him back and keep him back, because we can't afford any more injuries in that position. We've already got, Wilson with a long-term injury. We've got Sonny obviously with Richie with a long-term injury. We've got Mikey out now, so we can't afford to sort of lose another player in that area of the park. So I'll always make decisions that I think are best for the club and for us and what we're trying to achieve.
And in terms of your opponents, Ipswich, this weekend, I covered the game last week. It did look like until the 94th minute they were going to secure their first Premier League win of the season. How much more dangerous does it make them as opponents, knowing that they will be desperate for that first Premier League win of the season?
Yeah, I think I've said before, I think every weekend or every league game has its potential, to hurt you if you're not at your best. And Ipswich is going to be no different. As you said, that they got close last week. I think they've been close in a number of games this year. I think Kieran McKenna's done an unbelievable job since he's been there, and I think they continue to grow. It's always harder for clubs who get promoted who haven't sort of gone down and got the benefit of parachutes, payments, and experience. So the fact that he's got them competitive, and I think they have been competitive in just about every game this year, is a credit to him and his players. So we're expecting a tough one on the weekend, like we do every week. But our form, particularly at home, has been pretty strong this year, and we want to continue that.
Hi, Ange, how are you?
I'm good, mate.
Feels like a very open Premier League this season. I mean, teams that you would normally expect to be in the top three, like Arsenal, are not there right now. You can go third. Forest are doing really well. Did it feel like that to you?
Fair to say there's no kind of anyone who's, apart from Liverpool, I guess, who have hit sort of real consistency. And I guess, some of it's on the back of, some of the clubs you mentioned having significant injuries, which, will affect every team. Obviously, they've got stronger squads, but, we saw it with us last year. You get hit by injuries in certain areas, it will affect. So that's part of it. Other teams are showing some real consistency earlier this year. As you said, Forest have been really, really good. Brighton have been good. So, it feels more open, for sure. But again, I think you just got to, with these kind of things, wait till you get a little bit more into the season to see how it all sort of pans out, because any club that gets hit with significant injuries in one particular area could have the same sort of challenges that some of the top clubs are.
It seemed in recent years that the number 9 was sort of going out of fashion, and playing false nines was the way that a lot of managers wanted to do it. Yet this week we've seen Victor Gyökeres, Sporting Lisbon. Obviously you saw Osman last night. Last week we saw Dominic Solanke. For you, is he in that bracket? And do you think that seeing these players scoring the number of goals they're now scoring will encourage more kids to want to be a number 9?
Yeah, look, I get that we love a trend, particularly one that lasts, as long as 3 weeks in the game. But we've got Lewandowski, we've got Harry Kane. There's some pretty good strikers around the place, and it's a challenging position for sure. It always has been in our game, because scoring goals is still the most difficult thing to do in football, and to play in that position you have to have a certain personality, I've always believed, a really strong mindset, because ultimately what you do know is that you never get multitudes of chances, and the ability to forget what's happened before and focus on next chance. When you get players like that, that's why they're worth their weight in gold, and I've left out a certain Haaland in that as well. So, and look, we're really happy with Dom. Like I said, not just his goals, his general play and the way he's kind of come into the club. He's become a bit of a leader on the field, and great for us. And I certainly believe there's more in him. And I've always liked to play with strikers. I dabbled with false nines as well, only because I was bored for a season. And but if you've got a good striker, you put him in your team.
And when you mentioned Hugo Lloris, you were asked about Hugo's book, you said you never put a ceiling on your ambitions or on your aims. What about players? How do you convince a player who because it's easy to have been sort of ground into you that Champions League playing in that is everything. So how do you get over to a player not to put a limit on their ambitions or their ceiling, and top four isn't the trophy that they should be after?
It's just, I guess that's just a kind of a daily process of, you know, how you work on a daily basis. If your mindset every day is to come in and improve, well, you know, how do you know where that's going to take you, you know? And if you're already putting a ceiling on that or a target on that, then that, you know, that ambition to improve every day kind of diminishes because you've got a set target. And I've never believed in set targets. Like I said, if I had ambitions, clear ambitions when I was coaching in Australia, I probably would have surpassed them in my first 2 years of coaching. So I see that in kind of my own journey, and I've seen it, and the players have been no different. I mean, there's you know, you look at their own stories, where they started to where they are. I'm sure there was plenty of people along the way who told them that they weren't going to make it for one reason or another, but they're here. So you should never limit what you're doing. Like I said, that's a daily process for me. It's not. That's why I don't talk about, you know, where we're going to end up. What I talk about is, you know what, let's be better today than we were yesterday, and keep doing that. And if that is a continual process, in time you'll see where your limits are, and you know, rather than predetermine them, let them sort of come to fruition after, you know, having the right mindset.
Ange, we've talked a lot about the success of your decision to move Kulusevski into midfield this season. Can you talk a bit about your thought process for doing that, and was there a specific moment that led you to that conclusion? Not
a specific moment. Like I think I've said before, I think, you know, with Decky, I think the way we get our wingers to play probably doesn't suit him. More, not his skill set, more I think his personality. He's just a player who's much more engaged in the game when he's constantly involved, and bringing him into the central area means he's constantly doing that. I think at times with us last year, when he was on the wing, he kind of, you know, with the way our wingers play, you're not involved all the time. There's a discipline in keeping your position, and sometimes not receiving the ball is part of that process of, you know, we put our wingers where we do to sort of pin back oppositions. And I could see, you know, he was not frustrated, but, you know, he just wanted to give more. So, you know, we obviously, towards the back end of last year, we played him kind of inside a couple of times, and you could see him sort of growing into that. And, you know, certainly from the beginning of pre-season this year, it was always the intention to bring him inside and let him develop. And he has, and he's improving. That's the key thing. It's not like he's just gone inside, but he's actually working on his game, areas where he can hurt the opposition, working on the defensive side of his game, because it's a little bit different to playing out in the wing. And I think he's enjoying it, which obviously, you know, helps in terms of his own development.
Did you say that you'd seen that he had played there for Atlanta?
Yeah. No, look, I'd looked at his background, obviously, and, you know, when he was growing up and sort of when he first broke into first team, that was kind of his position. And then sort of... And look, it's not that he can't play out wide. I think he got sort of put in that position because he was effective out there, you know, when he played, and particularly in teams that kind of played counter-attacking football, which allowed him then the space to run at people. I think you could see why he'd go out there. But some of it's just, you know, natural development of players. There's plenty of wide players who end up playing inside because their game develops and they understand more about it, and I think he's one of those.
What does he need to add to his game next? What's the next challenge?
Like I said before, just, you know, that's exactly my point, is just constant improvement in everything. You know, there's nothing that he can't improve in. And you know, Decky's, you know, we talk about ambition. If you speak to him, he's got pretty lofty ambitions for himself as a player, and what he can do. And, you know, with that kind of mindset, he can improve in all facets of his game. He's already very, very effective for us, with and without the ball. But, you know, the exciting bit is I think there's a lot more to come.